On my father-in-law's birthday, I left her alone among her family while I stayed home. My absence wasn't just an empty chair. It was the verdict for a fractured love, a silent confession of the irreconcilable differences between two worlds. My name is Jake, and there's something I've never told anyone, not even Laura, my wife, which is I don't hate my in-laws, but I always felt like a borrowed guest at their gatherings, like an extra, trying to belong to a play I wasn't part of. A feeling of isolation, of being an outsider, clung to me like a shadow every time I stepped into their house or joined any of their get-togethers. I always felt like I had to wear a mask, trying to blend into a world that wasn't mine, and that very feeling became my own secret, a secret I never dared to share, for fear of hurting Laura, of disappointing her. It was a slow-burning thorn in my side, growing over time, strong enough to corrode an entire relationship. Sometimes I wonder, in this bustling life, how many of us are living with a secret, a burden we can't share with anyone. I once thought I had it all, a stable job, a beautiful, capable wife. But tonight, as Laura sleeps in the next room, and I lie awake in the living room with only the hum of the air conditioner, I find myself drifting in an endless void. Tonight is like every night, quiet, long, and without an end. But within me, one question won't let me sleep. Was I wrong? Or was I just different? Is that difference a sin? Laura and I met at a small coffee shop where she worked part-time as a student. Laura was a lively, energetic girl with a radiant smile that could dispel any dark clouds in my life. She was like a ray of sunshine tearing through the darkness within me. I, on the other hand, was an introvert who loved quiet, hated crowds and noisy places. I liked to read, listen to music, and spend time alone with my own thoughts. We were two opposing poles, like fire and ice, yet strangely drawn to each other. Our love blossomed quickly, intensely. I loved Laura with all my heart, loved her dynamism, her passion, and the warmth she brought. I believed that with love, we could overcome any differences. I thought that love would be the strongest bridge between our two distinct worlds. We got married after 2 years of dating, a small, cozy wedding attended by close friends and family. On our wedding day, Laura glowed like a princess from a fairy tale. She looked at me with eyes full of love and hope. I felt the same. I promised myself I would bring her happiness, that I would build our own small family, a place where we could be ourselves. I believed that in that home, we wouldn't need to wear any masks, wouldn't need to pretend to be anyone else. But then, I met Laura's family. They were a traditional, large family, always gathering together for every holiday, birthday, or even just a weekend meal. They were loud, intimate, always exchanging affectionate gestures and words as if they were an inseparable unit. Every conversation was boisterous, full of laughter and endless chatter, and I often felt lost in them. At first, I tried to blend in. I smiled and talked, trying to strike up conversations, joining their games and small talk. I drank alcohol even though I didn't like it. I tried to tell jokes even if I didn't find them funny myself. I wanted Laura to be proud of me. I wanted her to see that I could be a part of her family, an ideal son-in-law as they wished. I tried everything, from memorizing the names of every distant relative, remembering stale old family stories they endlessly repeated, to practicing more open conversations, but it was all a terrible struggle. Yet, that effort exhausted me. I felt like I always had to perform, to force myself to be someone I wasn't. I wasn't used to loud conversations, jokes I sometimes didn't understand, or effusive hugs and pecks on the cheek that made me feel awkward, even uncomfortable. I'm an introspective person, preferring to observe rather than participate. I preferred deep, private conversations over noisy small talk. Every time they asked me about my job, about future plans, I felt pressured, like I was being interrogated. They didn't mean any harm, I knew, but their way of caring suffocated me, as if I was being choked. The constant questions about my salary, about buying a house, having children, all created an invisible pressure I didn't know how to handle. My father-in-law's birthday was always the same every year. Grand, complete, obligatory. It was a mandatory ritual that every member of Laura's family had to attend. No one was allowed to be absent, no matter how busy, no matter how far away. Everyone was joyful, bustling with preparations. While I just worried, I would say something out of line, or not wear the right color they specified, or eat improperly, be scrutinized, or be forced to participate in group games I utterly disliked. The meals lasted for hours, with dozens of different dishes, and countless stories I couldn't break into, as if I were an outsider watching a movie. a play in which I was not an actor. The first year I went, I heard my father-in-law tell Laura, his voice filled with disappointment, "Jake is too quiet, honey, hard to connect with. He doesn't seem to fit our family's atmosphere much." His eyes scrutinized me, as if I were something that didn't belong, a blemish on the perfect canvas of their family. Those words, though just a fleeting remark, pierced my heart like a thorn, making me feel insecure and self-conscious. I tried much harder. I practiced talking more, laughing louder, immersing myself in the conversations. I tried to learn each family member's preferences, bought them gifts on special occasions, even offered to help with chores around the house. The second year, I tried to strike up a conversation with her younger brother. He just gave curt, one-word replies, his eyes glued to his phone screen, as if my presence was an annoyance. I tried to help my mother-in-law clear the dishes after dinner, but she just waved her hand. "No need, dear, just sit and relax. The kids can handle it." I felt superfluous, like a strange guest who had intruded on their private party, someone with no value in building the family atmosphere, not allowed to touch their world. The harder I tried, the more I felt pushed away, like a lonely boat adrift in the vast ocean, unable to find a port. Laura tried to soothe me. She always said, "Don't mind him. That's just how my dad is. Everyone likes you. They just aren't used to you yet. They just want you to open up a little more." But I knew she was lying or reassuring herself. I didn't see affection in their eyes, only scrutiny, judgment, and a certain distance, even subtle disdain. Gradually, gatherings with my in-laws became my nightmare. Every time I received a call inviting me to a gathering, my heart pounded, a creeping sense of dread. I always looked for excuses not to go, to escape the scrutinizing glances and the feeling of being an outsider, to be alone in my own space, where I could breathe deeply without feeling suffocated. Laura noticed my unease. She began to shield me, trying to pull me into conversations, or even creating escape routes for me by making excuses to take me to get something or help her with a task. She always tried to protect me from her family's less-than-kind remarks. Laura had to strain herself. She had to save face for me while enduring veiled comments from her relatives. I saw her getting thinner and thinner, her eyes showing fatigue and stress. But as time went on, I felt more and more like a burden to her. Laura had to strain herself to be the bridge between me and her family, to explain my differences, and to endure the less-than-kind remarks that I should have faced. I knew she was tired, and I felt guilty. But I couldn't change myself, couldn't become someone else just to please them. I was stuck in my own nature, unable to break free. I started withdrawing from joint social activities. I refused to go to Laura's friends' parties, refused to join her close friends on excursions. I just wanted to be home, in my own world, with my books, my music, and the quiet. Laura tried to pull me out of that shell. She organized private dates, movie nights at home, but I felt no interest anymore. I started to wonder if I was trapped in my own cocoon, unable to escape. Our relationship slowly rotted from within. There were no big arguments, no heated debates, only a frightening silence, an invisible distance that grew wider and wider between us. Our conversations revolved only around simple things like work, meals, or trivial household matters. Stories about dreams, about emotions, about the deepest secrets of our hearts gradually disappeared, replaced by a chilling emptiness. I remember once Laura tried to share with me about a pressure she was enduring at work. She talked a lot, describing the difficulties, the stress she was going through. I sat there, listening, but my mind drifted elsewhere. I didn't know what to say, how to comfort her. I just nodded, occasionally murmuring a few sounds. When she finished, she looked at me with hopeful eyes, waiting for advice, empathy, a comforting hug. But I just said, "Just try your best. Everything will be fine." A hollow, insipid, soulless phrase. Her eyes dimmed. She said nothing more, just quietly got up and went into the room. I knew I had disappointed her. I had hurt her. I couldn't be the strong support she needed most, couldn't be the partner she deserved. Conversely, Laura no longer tried to understand me either. She stopped asking me what I was thinking, no longer tried to draw me into deep conversations. She seemed to have accepted the fact that I was a quiet, reserved person, and she couldn't change that. That acceptance, to me, was more painful than any reproach. It was like a verdict that our relationship had reached a dead end, beyond salvage. It was a silent surrender. Our evenings became tedious, endlessly long. I sat in the living room reading. Laura watched TV in the bedroom. We ate dinner together, but didn't talk. Meals became a form of torture, as each of us was immersed in our own thoughts, in burdens that couldn't be shared. I remember in the early days of our love, we could talk for hours, telling each other everything. From the smallest details to the grandest dreams, we shared every joy and sorrow, every secret. But now, all that was gone, leaving only silence and invisible gaps. An invisible wall separating two people who once loved each other deeply. I also began to notice small changes in how Laura treated me. Clear signs of distance. She no longer proactively hugged me when I came home from work, no longer asked me about my day. She no longer prepared breakfast for me every morning. Small acts of affection, sweet habits gradually disappeared, replaced by coldness and distance. Even when we slept next to each other, I felt an invisible wall between us, an unnerving unfamiliarity. I knew it was a sign of collapse, but I still didn't dare to face it. I still deluded myself that everything would be okay, that with time, we would get through it, that this was just a temporary difficult phase. I also began to feel lonely in my own home, even when Laura was there. I remember long sleepless nights, watching Laura sleep soundly next to me, but feeling her more distant than ever. I wanted to touch her, to hold her tight, to tell her that I loved her. I was afraid of losing her, but I didn't dare. I was afraid of startling her, afraid of annoying her, afraid she would push me away. I was afraid to face the truth that our love was slowly dying, little by little, every day. I started looking for reasons to stay late at work, or go to a coffee shop alone after work, just to delay going home. Our home, which should have been a haven, became a cramped cage, where I felt suffocated by the silence and Laura's invisible glances. I knew it was selfish. I knew Laura was waiting for me. But I couldn't face her, couldn't face myself. This year, my father-in-law's birthday was approaching. It was our 4th year of marriage, like an unskippable ritual. Laura asked me again if I was going. Her eyes were full of hope, full of anticipation, as if she was placing all her last faith in my answer. I looked at her, deeply into her tired eyes, and I knew she wanted me to say yes, wanted me to try one more time for her, for our relationship, for a fragile glimmer of hope. I saw the deep fatigue in her eyes, etched deep into her soul, but I also felt the fatigue at its peak within myself. I couldn't do it anymore. I didn't want to play a role, even for love. That burden had become too much to bear, too heavy for me to continue carrying, but I didn't. I couldn't force myself to say yes, couldn't utter another lie. I said, "You go. I'm tired. Besides, I don't fit that atmosphere. I think I'll stay home. I'm sorry." No anger, no harshness. I spoke the truth as gently as possible, trying not to hurt her further. I didn't want to hurt her, but I also couldn't continue to lie to myself and to her. I was too tired of pretending, too tired of the masks. And that honesty, it widened the distance between us by a few more steps, to the point where it was impossible to reach each other anymore. As if we were at opposite ends of a road with no meeting point, I saw Laura's eyes suddenly dim, like a candle just blown out, leaving only a faint wisp of smoke from disappointment, from a hope ruthlessly extinguished. She said nothing, just nodded heavily, then turned away. Her shoulders slightly slumped, as if she had just shed an invisible burden. A burden she had been trying to carry for so long. That silence was more painful than any reproach, for it was the acceptance of a heart that was too tired, no longer able to fight, a heart that had given up. That evening, I ate alone. The meal was cold, only the clinking of cutlery in the empty kitchen, my chewing echoing loudly in the silent space. Each grain of rice felt like a pebble stuck in my throat, hard to swallow. I turned on the TV not because I wanted to watch, but just to fill the emptiness in the house, to fill the frightening silence that engulfed me. I thought of Laura, thought of her having to fend off scrutinizing glances, tactless questions from her family alone. Questions like, "Where's Jake? Why didn't he come with you? Are you two doing okay lately? He doesn't seem to like our family much, does he?" I imagined her having to smile, having to lie for me, having to make excuses for my absence. He had an unexpected work emergency. He's a little tired. He sends his regards. I pictured her clumsy lies, lies she had to utter to protect me, to save both our faces. Surely she must have felt pressured, felt so hurt having to face all of that alone, like a solitary warrior on a silent battlefield, unsupported, ununderstood. I knew she was carrying a part of the responsibility that I should have shared, but I refused, and I felt a deep remorse, a gnawing conscience. I knew she was hurt, and so was I. No one did anything overtly wrong, it was just, no one had the strength to keep playing the ideal. perfect person in the other's eyes. I wasn't the man her family expected, and I couldn't change my nature just to please them. I tried, but that effort drained me, distancing me from Laura herself, from my true self. The differences between us, initially an attraction, now became an insurmountable abyss, a chasm that the more we tried to fill, the wider it became. With no escape, she came home late. The clock hands pointed past midnight. I heard the faint clinking of keys at the door, her light, slow footsteps in the night. She didn't complain. No reproaches, didn't say a single word about the birthday party, about what she had endured. She just quietly went into the bathroom, then got into bed. I heard her sigh in the dark, a mournful, heavy sigh, as if releasing so many burdens, so much sadness. But that very silence made me feel small, made me feel guilty, made me feel cowardly, useless. I wanted to hold her, wanted to apologize, wanted to explain everything, wanted to tell her I loved her. I was afraid of losing her. I needed her, but I didn't dare. I was afraid of startling her, afraid of annoying her, afraid she would push me away. Or worse, not react at all. I was afraid to face the truth that our love was slowly dying, little by little, every day. And I was the one who had pushed it to the brink. I knew, sometimes love doesn't die from betrayal. It dies from the times one person stands alone among their family, while the other chooses to stay home. It dies from invisible distances, from the absence of understanding and sharing. And there are empty chairs that speak more than any words we never got to say, or even dared not to say. That empty chair wasn't just my absence. It was the absence of understanding, of connection, and of a part of our love. It was a symbol of invisible distances, of things left unsaid, and of the loneliness Laura had to endure, alone within her own family, among her loved ones. I realized my silence, my withdrawal, had become a slow poison, gradually killing our relationship. I thought I was protecting myself, protecting my peace from unwanted pressures, but in reality, I was destroying everything, destroying the love we had built, destroying all the best things Laura had given me. And Laura, that strong woman, who had always tried for me, finally couldn't bear it anymore. Her patience had run out. Her endurance had reached its limit, like a violin string stretched to its absolute breaking point. After that night, the atmosphere in the house grew heavier than ever. The silence was no longer the peace I once sought. It became an invisible, cold wall separating us. Laura still woke up early, prepared her own breakfast, no longer asking me what I wanted to eat. She still went to work, still came home on time, but everything happened with an unnerving indifference. We were like two strangers living under the same roof, each in our own world, never intersecting. I tried to initiate conversation. One evening, I asked, "Did anything fun happen today?" Laura just gave a short reply, "Nothing special." I asked again, "Do you want to go somewhere this weekend?" She just shook her head. "I'm too tired. I just want to stay home." Every time I tried to reach out, I felt her pull away a little more, like a hedgehog bristling to protect itself. I knew she was building a wall, and I was the one who had laid the first bricks. I remember one rainy day, Laura came home with her coat soaking wet. She seemed to have been crying, her eyes slightly swollen. I wanted to ask her what happened, wanted to hold her close, but I hesitated. I stood there, watching her quietly walk into the room. Afterward, I heard her sobbing in the bathroom. I stood outside the door, my heart aching, but I didn't dare knock, didn't dare step in. Cowardice won again. I thought, maybe she wanted to be alone. I told myself I was respecting her, but in reality, I was avoiding a husband's responsibility. The next morning, she came out of the room as if nothing had happened. I knew how strong she was, and I felt even weaker. Long nights, I lay beside Laura, feeling her steady breath. I had once dreamed of a happy family with her, of children. Now, those dreams burst like soap bubbles. I wondered, was I a failure? I couldn't make her family accept me, and I couldn't keep my own happiness. I had focused too much on my own fears, on my own comfort, forgetting that love needs nurturing, needs sacrifice, and needs to be faced head-on. I started looking for deeper reasons for my reclusiveness. Perhaps it stemmed from my childhood. I was an only child. Both my parents were quiet, reserved people. My family also didn't have noisy gatherings. I grew up in a quiet environment, and that quietness became a part of me. I never learned how to communicate openly, how to express emotions, or how to integrate into a crowded, lively environment. I always felt different, and I was afraid of being judged. That fear had eaten deep into my subconscious, and it had become an invisible barrier between me and the outside world, between me and Laura. I realized that I had been too selfish. I only thought of myself, of my comfort, forgetting that Laura also needed me, needed my support, needed me to face pressures with her. She tried so hard to understand me, to accept me, to protect me, but I couldn't do the same for her. I left her to fight alone, and that was my biggest mistake. The last few days before Laura left, we no longer looked into each other's eyes. Every gesture, every word carried the weight of indifference and exhaustion. I still went to work, still came home, but no longer felt a home waiting for me. The house became an empty shell, with only memories and silence. I knew it was the end. I felt it in every breath, every heartbeat. One fateful Monday morning, I went to work as usual, completely unaware that it was the last time I would see Laura in this house, as my wife. When I returned home that evening, a strange, chilling emptiness enveloped me. The house was dark, no warm light from the kitchen, no familiar smell of food. An unease crept into my heart, a bad premonition, a chillingly familiar feeling, as if I had experienced this in a dream before. I called Laura's name, my voice lost in the empty space, but there was no reply. I went through every room, checking every corner, every closet, every drawer, but found no trace of her. Only a terrifying silence, a silence I had once longed for, now became a nightmare. On the dining table was a handwritten note, short, but each word was like a knife cutting into my heart, piercing through the shell of indifference I had built for myself. I picked up the paper, my hands trembling, each letter dancing before my eyes, but their meaning was heartbreakingly clear. I'm tired, Jake. Not because you didn't go, but because I always have to explain for you. I'm tired of being the bridge between you and my family. I'm tired of having to strain myself to please everyone. While I don't even know where I stand, where I belong, I no longer know where us ends and me begins. I feel like I'm standing between two worlds, and neither world fully belongs to me. I can't keep pretending everything is okay. I can't keep living in this silence and these invisible lies. I need to find myself again. Find peace, where I can breathe easily without feeling suffocated, where I can be myself without having to try for anyone. I'll be at my dad's house for a few weeks. I hope you understand. I finished reading, slumped into the chair, the crumpled paper in my hand. An emptiness washed over me, colder than any winter wind. For the first time in years, the house was truly silent. No more hum of the air conditioner, no clinking of dishes, no familiar footsteps of Laura, no more warmth of a woman trying to make everything right, trying to maintain a home that only she nurtured. This silence was more terrifying than any noise, because it was the sound of emptiness, of an end. I had pushed her away myself, with my own silence and cowardice. I had lost Laura, not because someone else intervened, but because I had slowly, bit by bit, drifted away from her. In the days that followed, I lived in that empty house, like a drifting shadow. I called Laura, but she didn't pick up. I texted. She only replied briefly. I knew she needed space, but I also couldn't bear her absence. I realized I had become so accustomed to Laura's presence, so used to having her by my side, that I had taken it for granted. Now, with her gone, I finally felt the emptiness. 2 months later, we filed for divorce. The process was quick, without arguments, without a single tear from either side. We simply signed the papers, accepting the truth that everything was over, accepting that our relationship had reached its end with no escape, not because of betrayal, but because staying, in the end, exhausted us more than leaving. Our love didn't die from hatred, but from irreconcilable differences, from the invisible walls we built ourselves, and from the frightening silence that slowly corroded everything until there was nothing left to save. I wasn't brave enough to face the problems, to seek solutions, and I left Laura to bear it all alone, until she couldn't take it anymore and decided to let go, freeing us both. I still stay in this house, occasionally turning on the TV out of old habit, just to fill the emptiness and silence, to hear some sound other than my own sighs. But this time, I no longer thought of the scrutinizing glances from her family. I thought of Laura. I thought of her radiant smile when we first fell in love. I thought of her tired eyes when she left, eyes filled with disappointment but also relief, and the chair she used to sit in at the dining table, the chair where she had to sit alone at so many parties, so many long nights when I chose to stay here, in my own solitude. That chair now became a symbol of loneliness, of unspoken things, of a love that died in silence. The chair is empty now, forever, and it's a constant reminder of what I lost. Not because someone was wrong, but because we couldn't walk through our differences together. Couldn't find common ground in the silence. The solitude I chose, in the end, became true solitude. I locked myself in the shell of my differences, and I lost the woman I loved. Perhaps I didn't just lose Laura, but also lost a part of myself in that silent battle. A battle I miserably lost. Now, I'm learning to face loneliness. I turn off the TV, letting the house sink into silence. But this time, the silence is no longer terrifying. It's a reminder for me of what happened, of the mistakes I made, of the things I need to change within myself. I started reading more, spending time alone to reflect, to look back on what is past, to examine my conscience. I ask myself, can I change? Can I learn to integrate, to open up more, to accept differences? Not just in others, but also in myself. Can I break free from my shell of insecurity and cowardice, or will I forever be a lonely person in my own world? Trapped by fears and lack of self-confidence, I started seeing a therapist. He helps me look deep inside, exploring the root causes of my reclusiveness and my fear of crowds. I realized that the fear of being judged, of being rejected, had been deeply ingrained in my subconscious since childhood. I always feared I wasn't good enough, wasn't worthy of love and acceptance, and that fear made me withdraw, creating an invisible wall between me and those around me, including Laura. I also learned that refusing to participate in family gatherings wasn't just about my comfort. It was also a lack of respect for Laura and her family. It was a burden I placed on her shoulders, forcing her to carry it alone. Each therapy session is an internal struggle. There are times I want to give up, want to return to the safety of my shell. But then I remember Laura's eyes. I remember the empty chair, and I know I have to continue. I have to change. Not just for Laura, but for myself. For a better life. I'm learning to accept who I am, to accept my weaknesses, and to love myself. I'm also learning to communicate more effectively, to express emotions, and to face my fears. Even though Laura and I are no longer together, I no longer feel regret or bitterness. Instead, I feel a strange sense of peace. I know she chose the path that was right for her, and I am finding my own. I still hope Laura is finding the happiness and peace she deserves. A place where she doesn't have to stand alone among her family. A place where she is loved and fully understood. As for me, I will have to face this life alone, with the deep scars, and learn to forgive myself, so I can move forward, so I can become a better version of myself, a braver, more open man, who knows how to love more completely. I believe that one day, I will find a woman who can accept me for who I truly am, and together we can build a real home, a place with no empty chairs, no frightening silence. This is my story. A man who lost his love not due to hatred, but due to invisible distances and silence. What are your thoughts on this story? Was there a way for Laura and me to overcome these differences, or was the separation inevitable? And if you were me, what would you have done to salvage the relationship? Or would you have accepted the truth and moved forward on your own path? Leave your comments below. Share your thoughts and feelings about this story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on other compelling and dramatic stories. Thank you for listening. See you in the next videos. Goodbye.